Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure to stand up during night adjournment proceedings to discuss an important local project in my community, the Okanagan Rail Trail. The rail trail is a 50-kilometre biking and walking path which pans from Kelowna by Wood Lake, Kalamalka Lake, and north to just before Vernon. The reason it is called the rail trail is because its path follows a discontinued CN rail line, which operated in the Okanagan Valley from 1925 to 2013. Local governments, with help from the province of BC, purchased the old CN rail line with the goal of turning it into a recreation trail. This is a model of cooperation with the City of Kelowna, District of Lake Country, Okanagan Indian Band, and Regional District of the North Okanagan. They work collaboratively together as the Okanagan Rail Trail Committee and in partnership with the passionate volunteer group Friends of the Okanagan Rail Trail. They are a common voice for governance for trail management and development. Over a 2-year period, volunteers, individuals, business groups, and community champions worked to passionately fundraise over $7.8 million needed to develop the trail. This ranged from grants, events, to online fundraising campaigns, and even lemonade stands. Over 5,000 individual donors contributed to this community legacy. The City of Kelowna paved their section of this path. Chief Byron Lewis of the Okanagan Indian Band says, the Okanagan Rail Trail was originally part of a larger, interconnected network of trails utilized by our people to access all parts of Northern Silk Territory to undertake essential sustenance, societal, and spiritual activities. Currently, a portion of this trail midway through is incomplete and cannot be worked on due to federal government delays in administering an addition to reserve to the Okanagan Indian Band. To bypass the incomplete section, individuals must divert onto a narrow, high-speed roadway. It is dangerous for both pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers. This is an issue of priority in my community dating back now to 2016, and I've heard from many constituents. During the time of the pandemic, people were outdoors and recreating more, and it was a shame that another summer went by where the trail was not fully utilized. It is also a key route for commuters who want to get some exercise and reduce their carbon footprint. Grant Stevens, a vice president at KF Aerospace, a major employer near the trail, wrote that they have, quote, a lot of employees that would like to bike to work if there was a safe alternative to the highway. I had written the minister, as had many of my constituents, about this issue. As a result of the silence from the minister, this was one of the first issues I raised in the House of Commons when Parliament returned after prorogation later in September. When I asked Minister Miller the question, he stated he would sit down with me at a later date to provide me with a briefing to discuss. A week after this question and still not hearing from the minister as he promised, I therefore sent another note to his office asking when we could schedule a meeting to discuss this issue. And the minister finally got back to me, and while he did not touch on a briefing or meeting to discuss, he did state the following in writing. The addition to reserve process is nearing its final stage. Can the minister provide a clear timeline on when exactly this addition to reserve will be completed?
The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the question from the member opposite. My call, and in fact her interest in the completion of the Okanagan Rail Trail initiative. I think that we all know that during the COVID-19 pandemic, with more people looking for ways to stay healthy while maintaining physical distancing, the completion of this trail could become an important link to provide more outdoor activity space for residents and visitors in Okanagan. Indigenous Services Canada is working with the Okanagan Indian Band and the Canadian National Railway Company to have the former railway line that cuts through Duck Lake Indian Reserve No. 7 added to the reserve in accordance with the government's additions to reserve policy, Mr. Speaker. I understand the addition to reserve process is nearing its final stage as the Okanagan Indian Band is currently working to complete the outstanding requirements and are negotiating replacement interests with local municipalities and companies who use the utility corridor that runs along the former rail line. Once the requirements have been met, the submission will be sent to the Minister of Crown and Indigenous Relations for approval. Once approved, it will be up to the Okanagan Indian Band to determine what it will do with the land. This addition to the reserve is on the national priority list. The department is, in fact, working hard with the Okanagan Indian Band and the Canadian National Railway Company to have the former railway line returned to Duck Lake Indian Reserve No. 7 through the federal government's additions to reserve process. However, there is no definite timeline as to when the addition to the reserve will be completed. We need to do it correctly, Mr. Speaker, and we are doing it in partnership. Additions to the reserve are complex, but the Government of Canada has made significant progress. Since November 2015, we have created 316 additions to reserve, adding more than 227,353 acres of land to reserves. And we have made this process easier through the addition of lands to reserves and Reserve Creation Act, which was passed in 2018. Also, since 2015, we have been advancing interest-based discussions and ensuring that the co-development is at the core of all negotiations. In September 2019, we co-developed the Recognition and Reconciliation of the Rights Policy for Treaty Negotiations in British Columbia with First Nations Summit and the British Columbia Government. We will continue working with First Nations to redesign the comprehensive land claims and inherent right policies. Work is already underway in collaboration with the Assembly of First Nations on this issue. Resolving historical grievances and adding lands to reserves helps to advance reconciliation, fulfill legal obligations, improve treaty relationships, and foster economic opportunities. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate what it is that the member has shared with the House, and I look at it from a point of view in terms of these trails are important to all of our communities, and we do need to follow a process that follows the idea of reconciliation, and I believe it's only a question of time before it happens. I can appreciate the sensitivity. That Kelowna, I've had the opportunity to visit out in Kelowna. It's a beautiful area of our country, and hopefully at some point we'll be able to see a trail.
Honourable member for Kelowna Lake Country.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, through you, and I appreciate the answer. Of course, this is dating back now to pre-2016. The trail was decommissioned in 2013. I was really involved at the time. I was on Municipal City Council from 2014 to 2018 when this decision was actually made by the local municipal governments. And so this is going back a number of years now, and of course all of the major stakeholders, I'm in continual conversations with them. I appreciate the statement this evening, but it's still very vague, and I know that all of the stakeholders and my constituents are looking for something that's more concrete as to a timeline. So can the member please provide more details as to what a timeline might look like?
Parliament Secretary.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just based on my experiences at this point in time, as there are discussions that continue to be ongoing and wanting to be respectful of the process, I don't know if it would be advisable to give some sort of a timeline, because in that timeline ultimately then becomes a deadline. I would like to ultimately, as I'm sure all members, be able to see us move forward on issues of reconciliation in a respectful way, look at ways in which we can ensure that things that want to be accomplished, such as what we're talking about, the trail today, are in fact in the best interest of all the different communities, the different stakeholders. And I'm optimistic that it won't be that long before hopefully we'll see something come out of this.